just a dream? What's up, kitties? How's it going? Oh, you're presenting the book? Yes, I know we've already read this one, but this is the February reading of The Secret Sharer. I'm reading this book every month, just the first selection in this book. Kind of a longish short story. Prismo, what did you think of The Secret Sharer? Seem quite fond of it, maybe? Squirrel, how about you? Anyway, I'm reading this 16,000 word short story, novelette, whatever it is. Just a half of this paperback. No, not quite half. Maybe a third. I'm going to read it every month this year, and already I'm glad I'm doing this project because the second read was an even better read than the first one. I don't agree with Nabokov that the only good reading is rereading, because sometimes first read-throughs have a real pleasure to them, you know, being really surprised by this or that, everything being fresh and so on. However, when you have read it already, it's like every page you already know the characters. It's great. Every time I read The Secret Sharer this year, I'm going to approach it a little bit differently. Do something different. One time I'll probably listen to an audiobook, and one time I'll probably look up every word I don't know and make a list. And one time I'll probably also read the Robert Silverberg sci-fi remake of the book. One time I'll probably watch a movie with it. And other times I'll read this or that criticism from whatever perspective to go with it. But this time, I thought it'd be cool to just skip the introduction, skip any extras, and just go right to it. Read it on its own, almost new criticism style. And because I did a lot of that sort of thing when I read through it the first time. But this time, it just hit me so hard on a symbolic level, on a physical level. I thought, what a great movie this would make. I genuinely like this long story so much better than Heart of Darkness. And Heart of Darkness is cool. This kind of did make me want to reread Heart of Darkness, because I'm like, I think I like Conrad. And I really am excited to read this cool old biography of him, or study of his work. A Reader's Guide to Joseph Conrad, that's what it is. Looks like it's got a lot of interesting things. Time in Conrad. Middle Conrad. Victory. Late Conrad. Here's a note I made during my first read-through that I don't think I quite addressed. In The Secret Sharer, which was written in 1909 and 1910, it seems to be a journey toward health, toward wholeness and completeness. And in Heart of Darkness, it's a journey toward sickness and death, 1899. I suppose it's good that the one he wrote later was toward health. Interesting. But this book just really grabbed me. It's really just only about 40 pages long. I've read online it's 16,000 words, as I've said. Cat just was stuck in my closet. But just a quick recap for those of you that haven't watched that first video. I'll try to put these together into a playlist. I haven't done a playlist on this channel yet, but these might be interesting to all watch together once they're together. Because it'll be a deep dive into this work eventually, in some way. But I read this today in two classrooms in a library at a middle school. And not just today, a few other places, but mostly today. Actually, exactly half today, because I read the first half before today, and I finished the second half today. This was published in 2 parts in some long ago journal. But what stood out for me reading it this time were just how beautiful some of these passages are, how funny some parts are. Like I got a lot of humor out of this one. Isabel said the same thing. So, and I trust her opinion. But I mean, the whole piece, it starts with this really detailed description. It's a wild move. You know, I've always been a little wary of writing advice that like overemphasizes how important your first sentence is. Like, I don't think I want those kind of readers that like, that's the most important thing. You bored me in the first page. I don't want to read it. Like a lot of writers I love, they don't make that big a deal out of their first page. I mean, yeah, you want it polished and you want it beautiful and everything like that. And everything should be great. And if you have an awesome first line, cool. But look at this beautiful move. He just describes every part of a scene like a proto-Robbie Gray. Goes from the right to the left. Interesting. And some of the description of this delta where this river is flowing into the Gulf of Thailand, here called the Gulf of Siam, are so vivid and beautiful and poetic and dreamy. Here and there gleams as of a few scattered pieces of silver mark the windings of the great river, and on the nearest of them. The descriptions, for instance, of light and shadow in here are always great. The ship floated at the starting point of a long journey, very still in an immense stillness, the shadows of her spars flung far to the eastward by the setting sun. I also noticed that there's a wonderful strain of comic relief throughout this, used effectively. He's got this chief mate who's all whiskery. He's got red whiskers and blue eyes, and his dominant trait was to take all things into earnest consideration. There's so many little digs against this guy. But I noticed something really interesting here. Maybe I should summarize the story really quick before I get into all this. Basically, a ship captain, late 1800s, no, probably early 1900s. Oh, well, let's say early 1900s, but it's never specified if it's, close to the time of writing. This is more of a Heart of Darkness cover, but still, it could apply to the Secret Sharer, especially the jungly bits. Okay, so this guy's a new captain on a boat. He's still figuring out his crew, still establishing a rapport. And late one night, while he has volunteered to take full responsibility for watching over the boat at night, which is interestingly received because people are like glad to get a break, but also like it makes their confidence in their captain falter a little bit, maybe, because they're like, why is he breaking protocol in this way? He's going to do all this stuff by himself. So because of this unconventional move, a rope ladder is left over the side and not pulled in. And when the captain peers over the edge at night, he's the narrator also, Conrad-esque figure perhaps, since we know Conrad was captain on a boat at one point. And he helps this guy up the ladder and dresses him in his clothes and hides him in his room. And he's just like his double. They're kind of both each other's doubles. And I think you could flip it around. And that's one thing this reading showed to me this time is you could, who you think is the real figure and who you think is the figure's shadow depends. It's probably Legat, the guy he lets up. But in a way, they're the two swirls of the yin and yang. And there's so much symbolism and psychology to pull out of all this. It's really beautiful and interesting. There's tension. There's a couple points where you really think, even reading it a second time, that they could get caught. This could end badly. I mean, I knew that probably wouldn't happen, but I still felt tension. I guess that's good writing. If you can read something you've already read and you know how it's going to turn out and your hackles are still up and you feel the suspense, wow. But there's so many funny digs against this chief mate, and they're really subtle. And I think like 4 or 5 times they made me laugh out loud. And because the captain is really frustrated with this guy because he might get him caught. And, everyone's a little nosy and wondering why this captain seems to be a little secretive around his cabin, maybe. And at one point, somebody really jumps because they thought they were sure they heard the captain in his cabin, and he's right there suddenly. One thing I caught reading it the first time, and in part because it's mentioned in the introduction, is this image of this chief mate had been trying to puzzle out how a scorpion had drowned himself in his inkwell. And then I noticed something in here this time. This is why you got to look up words, because I learned it from that. Is that we get that image of a scorpion in an inkwell in the beginning around page 21. But here on page 56, we get a figure the figure of the steward lingering in the pantry in the greatness of his zeal, giving a rub up to a plated cruet stand. So like a cruet is a narrow-necked glass bottle. So here we have something kind of like an inkwell, another glass vessel, but now it's empty. And this is after the shadowy figure has gotten away and escaped. The scorpion is now gone. I mean, when you encounter good writing and you see how layered it is and how thoughtful, it's incredible. And Conrad probably put all that in there intentionally. And if he didn't, his unconscious mind was brilliant and was collaborating with him. I think that was probably intentional, though. This might be a platitude, but it's not one you hear so much anymore, and I appreciated it, hearing it. Exactitude in some small matters is... I thought I was filming. Exactitude in some small matters is the very soul of discipline. One thing I said was that this is like the opposite of Emerson's "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." And both are good. You got to know when to hold them and you got to know when to fold them. Flow and resistance, those are really your options in life, Okay, here's some good writing. The side of the ship made an opaque belt of shadow on the darkling, glassy shimmer of the sea. Ugh, incredible. And he's got one of those wonderful writer minds that just sees things unconventionally and puts it into the work, and I appreciate that. It occurred to me that if old Bless My Soul, You Don't Say So were to put his head up the companion and catch sight of us, he would think he was seeing double, or imagine himself come upon a scene of weird witchcraft, the strange captain having a quiet confabulation by the wheel with his own gray ghost. Yeah. And something I picked up on this time that didn't stand out as much to me the first time, because when you read something just once, you only can get so much out of it, you know? If everything matters in a work, you think you're going to pick that up every time you read it. That's why rereading is so important. But this figure, this darkness, saved he had murdered somebody. He had choked to death this incompetent guy that he didn't like for different reasons in the middle of a storm, which is weird, and I guess that's based on a historical incident. But before that, he had ordered the sails to be reefed, which I looked up last time, but I need to look up again, and probably saved everyone's lives on the ship during this crazy storm. So what a wonderful complication of the story. You know, this darkness, this symbolic shadow self of the captain had maybe saved everybody, you know? Here, Legat is telling the captain how he got away, swimming away. I didn't mean to drown myself. I meant to swim till I sank, but that's not the same thing. And if you think about that as the darker aspects of yourself or the parts of yourself that you should let go, but nurture, that's very interesting. So you swam for our light. His shadow self swam for the captain's light. And the captain's light is elsewhere called the spirit light. Amazing, because it's an alcohol burner. Lines like this, I felt dual more than ever. Interesting to be watching the show Severance while reading this. I noticed this line this time, at this distance of years. So he's writing this years later. So if Conrad was on a steamship in 1890, and this was written circa 1909 and published in 1910, maybe he was looking back 20 years, you know, if he was adapting some of his stories. But he was in Africa. This book takes place in Thailand. I don't know if he was there also. You don't really know when the time of writing is or when the event took place exactly. It's kind of interesting. Maybe you can puzzle it out. Some future reading I might try. And as I said, it's in 2 parts. The parts don't seem like, I don't know, I think it was probably just had to do more with the publication than with the form. But then again, we'll see what reveals itself. This time I didn't get a lot of insights into why the 2 parts are, what setup and payoff maybe, I don't know. So this was an interesting line to see in an old book. What was that for? Fun? When he's hearing the account of this captain about exploring the islands. Like, isn't that a funny thing to hear in such an old work? People still talking about, did you do that for fun? To protect the shadow self, the captain lies that he has bad hearing because of a disease, giving him an excuse to talk loudly and repeat himself for his double who's hiding to hear. And here's somebody telling a story. This is great. The terror of that gale was on him yet. I love that. When this other ship's captain is talking to the captain, trying to find out if Legat is hiding on his boat, something in me reminded him of the man he was seeking. Yeah, this really is a double story. It's crazy. Necessity, they say, is mother of invention, but fear, too, is not barren of ingenious suggestions. Intelligent double had vanished. I played my part. Maybe the shadow self is not so much evil as it is intellectual. That brings with it a certain sharpness. My younger sibling was just talking to me about collaborating with accident in visual art. And this line reminded me of that. And as to the chapter of accidents, which counts for so much in the Book of Success, it's true. No victor believes in chance. Thank you, Friedrich Nietzsche. I just wanted to thank you for choosing this moment to clean yourself really loudly right next to me. Thanks. Yeah, this murderer had given these other 24 men a chance, at least for their lives, with the order of the reefed foresail. It was the sea gone mad. I wonder if Richard Shelton's poem, The Stones, where they say it is the stone gone mad, is referencing this. About the moon. It's a bunch of rocks in an arroyo talking about the moon. That's such a good poem, prose poem. What does it mean that the steward broke a cup? You know, isn't a cup a symbol of something, you know? carrying water, carrying something life-giving. A bounty of sorts. Yesterday I broke 2 cups. What's that about? Is that symbolic? And one said Keepers of the Flame on it. I got it at a thrift store because it reminded me of that book, The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Broke it right away. That's great. Classic me. I wouldn't be surprised if there have been readings of, like, on a sexuality level of this. Because he's like hanging out in the same bed with this guy. They were like, but it doesn't feel like a sexual or a physical intimacy between these two. What it feels like is the intimacy of one person talking with oneself. At one point, an irresistible doubt of his bodily existence flitted through my mind. I love that. And I just love precise writing and precise observations of humans. That's so cool. I whispered back, even more appalled than before, at the closeness of the shave, and marveling at that something unyielding in his character which was carrying him through so finely. That's cool. I felt that way about some of my friends before. Like, what? What are you doing? Lines like this. It would never do for me to come to life again. It was something that a ghost might have said. Wow. This really felt like something. I felt suddenly ashamed of myself. I may say that truly I understood. My hesitation in letting that man swim away from my ship's side had been a mere sham sentiment, a sort of cowardice. He's like beating himself up here for rescuing this guy. And that's so interesting. What is wrong? What is right? Found this passage very moving. As long as I know that you understand, he whispered, but of course you do. It's a great satisfaction to have got somebody to understand. You seem to have been there on purpose. And in the same whisper, as if we two, whenever we talked, had to say things to each other which were not fit for the world to hear, he added, it's very wonderful. I need to step up my description game after reading this. I'm like, wow. The east side of the Gulf is fringed with islands, some solitary, others in groups. On the blue background of the high coast, they seem to float on silvery patches of calm water, aired and gray or dark green and rounded like clumps of evergreen bushes, with the larger ones a mile or two long, showing the outlines of ridges, ribs of gray rock under the dank mantle of matted leafage. That unplayful cub had the watch. I love that. Unplayful. A little before supper, feeling more restless than ever, I rejoined for a moment my second self. Wow. Here's a part where the captain is startled by the dinner bell. Food, always a symbol of life. His shadow self didn't startle, though. He only released his grip. I mean, hey, college students, if you're looking for something to write an essay about, pick any passage from this, really, honestly. More beautiful description. The night, clear and starry, sparkled darkly in the opaque, lightless patches, shifting slowly against the low stars were the drifting islets. What? I noticed this time he gives him exactly half his money. Interesting. That thing with the cruet. Here the captain, as Legat is getting ready to go, he worries about him being sunburned and so on. The double captain. A sudden thought struck me. I saw myself wandering barefooted, bareheaded, the sun beating on my dark poll, which is an 1800s word for head. Shall I light the spirit lamp? Oh my goodness. The first of 2 mentions of the gate of Erebus. My tone had a borrowed loudness, reverberated from the height of the land. Several voices cried out together, "We are all on deck, sir." And stillness again, with the great shadow gliding closer, towering higher, without a light, without a sound. Such a hush had fallen on the ship that she might have been a bark of the dead, floating in slowly under the very gate of Erebus. A bark being a 3-masted ship. I laughed so much at this part because the captain has to steer the boat way up along this river. I think it's the river, yeah, and just get so close to land. Maybe it's just really close along the coast. I should be clear on that. I'm sorry, but I thought it was up the river. That was my impression. I should get that right by 12 readings, hopefully. And the whole crew is just aghast. Like, what are you doing? Are you trying to sink us on a bunch of rocks? But he knows he has to get close enough to land for his secret self to swim away. And it's really interesting. The hat that he gives to the guy ends up being this symbol that allows him to save his life and turn around. I think it really is about yin and yang, this story, a bit about how to coexist with your light and your dark, and or how to embrace your darkness in such a way that you can be free of it, maybe. And it's not wholly symbolic, too. It's a beautiful, interesting story. I mean, I kind of wish like David Lynch could have directed a movie about this. It would have been so good. But it would really be a wonderful movie in a dreamy style. I hear it has been adapted here and there. I will see what I can do to find those things. I thought this was such an interesting detail. The white object floating within a yard of the ship's side. That's the hat. But then he says a phosphorescent flash passed under it. What? What? And I watched the hat. The expression of my sudden pity for his mere flesh. It had been meant to save his homeless head from the dangers of the sun, and now, behold, it was saving the ship by serving me for a mark to help out the ignorance of my strangeness. The ignorance of my strangeness. It was drifting forward, warning me just in time that the ship had gathered sternway. And everyone's cheering, and it kind of ends on a happy note. They're all excited. They avoided the worst of it all. Everybody that was on the boat, they don't know what just all transpired, but the captain's been through something, and Legat has definitely been through something. And the ending is powerful and good. Get a great description of shadow, a darkness thrown by a towering black mass like the very gateway of Erebus. And this reference to the secret sharer of my cabin, of my thoughts, as though he were my second self, who had lowered himself into the water to take his punishment, a free man, a proud swimmer striking out for a new destiny. I might memorize this part, because this could be a fun just monologue to go off on in a Wendy's or something sometime. See you all. I'm a free man. I'm a proud swimmer striking out on a new destiny. Latest. So if any of you want to join me on this odd quest, I'm going to do this every year. I'm going to pick a shorter work and reread it every month, because I don't want to just do superficial first readings with this channel. I love rereading, and the only book I've ever done this with before where I read it this many times intentionally in a short amount of time was Wholly the Firm by Annie Dillard. And I will love that book forever because of that. And I feel like I've seen such depths in it, and I got so much info on how good writing works and how to elevate the everyday into the mythical. Not even to elevate, to recognize it and draw it out. Anyway, who'd have thought I'd become a Joseph Conrad fan? He was just a dusty old name I'd seen on shelves many times. I thought, oh, that's cool that Apocalypse Now adapted his book. But Secret Sharer, second reading. And, I really enjoyed this. Good book, good work. It stayed with me. It affected me like literature. And those of you that know that feeling. The way it, opens up new caverns within yourself and new views. I don't know. That thing that writing does that's so awesome that we love. The best writing. This did that for me. All right. Gizmo, do you have any last words today for the people on YouTube? Huh. That's interesting. I have to agree. All right. Yeah. Prismo, in a way, is like the shadow self of Baby Squirrel in this house. If I were to film a movie adaptation of this story with just my cats, I'd have Baby Squirrel play the captain, and Prismo would be the shadow self. Legat. And now I realize I should probably do that. At least a scene. See if that happens. First to write a script. Sew some little costumes. What's the matter? I asked in my ordinary tone, speaking down to the face upturned exactly under mine. Cramp, it answered, no louder, then slightly anxious. I say, no need to call anyone. I was not going to, I said. Are you alone on deck? Yes. I suppose your captain's turned in? I am sure he isn't, I said. Look here, my man, could you call him out quietly? I thought the time had come to declare myself. I am the captain, I said. I heard a, by Jove, whispered at the level of the water. So just consider that a proof of concept if anybody wants to fund my all-cat remake, a movie adaptation of The Secret Sharer. The outfits alone will make it worth it. Of course, we have a good cast. Some friends that are good at sewing. We can make this happen. All right, The Secret Sharer, read 2 for 2025. Looking forward to a reread in March. Take care, y'all.